Hi people, me again of course as always, Andrew as usual, Moino Ravenberg. As always, Andrew as usual, based on the header you can tell what I'm going to talk about. This is going to be a quick discussion about the mechanisms that make the world operate, the mechanisms that keep the world as we know it in place, and how this mechanism will simply cease to be upon the apocalypse. Now, before I continue or before I begin, when people, or especially the average person, they think about the apocalypse, it seems like some kind of highly unlikely, almost impossible scenario for them. Dare I say there are people that legitimately believe that the world would just keep going on and on and on, and that there is no such thing as the apocalypse. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. For those people, I hate to burst your bubble, but everything that has a beginning has an end, and the world had a beginning as well, obviously. So, well, obvious at least to me, it's gonna end, whether you want to or not, whether you like to or not, doesn't matter what you want, like, or whatever you think, it's gonna end, period. Now, I'm simply going to discuss in this video what I said, um, so that you can actually see how it is a realistically plausible scenario and something that can just and will happen. Now, things that a lot of people take for granted are the mechanisms that keep the world in place. And these are the spiritual mechanisms that manifest materially. So just plain overall mechanisms. Let's start with everything, the planets, the sun and the moon. People take the fact that the sun rises and sets every day, whether you live in a place where you see the sun or barely see the sun adversely. It does happen either way. The same thing with the moon. The moon rises and sets as well at night. The sun is the reason that so many things in the world, including the vegetation and whatnot, can live. Imagine a world without the sun. Obviously, you can see that, immediately all hell is going to break loose. So many things are going to die off. The entire world, as we know it, will be disrupted. Same thing with the moon. The moon is essentially what regulates all the water in the world. The moon is responsible for ebb and flow, for high tide and low tide, and everything else in between. And it just goes on like that. Imagine a world without the moon. You can see for yourself how, again, all hell will break loose. The entire world will be thrown into whack, put it that way. And it just goes on. All the elements are all around you. Okay, earth, air, fire, water, etc., etc. Okay, we're going to ignore the element spirit in a manner of speaking, strictly ignore, not meant this politely, obviously, or impolitely. Just gonna ignore that because it's impractical. We're just talking about the four elements that people are the most familiar with. Earth, air, fire, water, you can see it all around you. Literally everything. Like, for example, the materials that the very camera that I'm using to record are made from terrestrial elements. And it just goes on like that. It's of a technological nature which falls under the element air. And it just goes on and on and on. Okay. I'm gonna try to keep this as short as possible, this video. Now, imagine a world in which all of a sudden you wake up and there is no sun. The whole thing that all of us are used to, the whole notion of the sun coming up, rising in the east and setting in the west, it just stops. Imagine literally a world in which the earth does not experience sunshine. You can see for yourself what's going to happen. But in case you can't imagine, well, let me paint a picture for you. Like I said, for starters, all, if not most plants in the world will die off. Um, the certain elements we need in our bodies, as mentally as well as physically, so spiritually as well as materially, will also become severely disrupted with all the negative consequences that follow. And I can just keep going on. There are too many negativities to list. You can see for yourself. Now, add all the other things to that, such as the moon not shining at night or the moon not playing just coming up, so there being no moon all of a sudden will immediately cause all the water in the world to become disrupted. Every ocean will become disrupted, will either stop, there will be no more high tide, low tide, no ebb or flood, with all the negative consequences that follow, anything from flooding to a lack of water and everything and anything else in between. Same thing with the elements, and it just goes on like that. Okay. Imagine if one element all of a sudden, for some reason, ceases to be. Imagine if in the entire world, all of a sudden, there are no more terrestrial resources. All the things that people use, all the components that we use to manufacture certain things, ceases to be. Nothing. It's nothing but dirt. No more precious metals and minerals, or just plain metals and minerals. You can see for yourselves. Again, immediately, the entire world will become disrupted. You can say that sure, alternatives will be found, but it's not that simple. This is at a since mankind's existence, utilizing all the elements has been a fundamental component of mankind's existence, of just that, mankind's existence. We can't function without all of this stuff. So you can see that, hey, even if mankind were to be able to find a suitable alternative, at the very least, it's going to take a long time, or it might take a long time. And even then, it still obviously won't be the same, and there will be severe shortcomings, to put it that way. Why do you think that the world never runs out of resources? It doesn't matter how much resources mankind uses. The world just keeps going on and on and on and on and on. Because just plain and bluntly, simply put, God sees to it that it does happen. Regardless of what happens, God provides. The Lord provides. But if all of that, again, imagine literally if all of that just ceases to be. You see my point? And that's also what very shortly summarized will happen in the apocalypse, exactly as is written. Whether you believe it or not, what you believe, think, does not matter. It's going to happen. Okay, the world operates like a watch, a beautiful, elegant watch. All the gears are in motion, all the gears are going at the exact same speed, etc., etc. Now, disrupt that even in the slightest, and again, all hell is going to break loose. And at the apocalypse, that's why it's said that, hey, sun isn't going to shine, no more moon, nothing, boom, earthquake, all hell will break loose, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because mankind can't function without any of these things. We've gotten so used to this kind of stuff that people take it for granted. No one looks at the sun and is worried that, oh, please, son, I hope that one day I hope that you'll keep on going because my life depends on you. No, no, no. You can bluntly put, say that no one cares really because we're used to it. When you're so used to something like breathing, you're used to oxygen. It's another example, oxygen. Imagine all of a sudden if the oxygen in the world were to run out. Well, hell would break loose. Mankind would die out effectively. But we take all of this stuff for granted because we're used to it. We know that it's a fundamental component of existence. We just take it as it is. But you see my point. You see how literally, if only one of these elements vanishes from existence, how boom, all hell breaks loose. And you see that it doesn't matter how much, for example, how much happens, how much mankind pollutes, for example. I'm not saying you should pollute. I'm simply saying that doesn't matter how much you try to bluntly put destroy, hypothetically speaking, an element, will never happen because the Lord provides. Doesn't matter how much you litter, doesn't matter how much you do this or do that, in a manner of speaking, the elements will stay in place the same way they stayed in place since mankind's entire existence, since the existence of the world. But when all of that gets disrupted, then again, all hell is going to break loose and everyone is going to start flipping out and people are going to start dropping like flies and they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off and it just goes on like that. So yeah, that's essentially it. There is no need to discuss everything in detail. I've already said enough, but look at all the things that I mentioned. How you watching this most likely are taking it for granted, not in a negative way, but you just take it as it is, like I said. Now imagine literally only one of these things, let alone multiple of them, let alone all of them, just ceasing to be. The air you breathe, the sun, the moon, everything. See for yourself how immediately there is no you without it. Nothing. You'll immediately drop dead or near immediately drop dead, either hypothetically or literally, or anywhere else in between. That's all. Bye bye.